When you look back at the season from hell that the Fever had, none of us expected them to be in this situation. None of us expected them to be winning a very close Game 3.
What if the one player everyone wrote off for the year suddenly walked out for the WNBA Finals? Sounds wild, almost unrealistic. But there's been quiet chatter about a narrow rule that might open a door, just enough for a sliver of daylight, to bring Caitlin Clark back if the Fever reach the biggest stage. They weren't supposed to be here in the first place. The preseason models had Indiana scraping for a seed, maybe missing out entirely. Then the floor fell out when Clark went down. Most teams would have wilted, this group didn't. Aaliyah Boston took on more responsibility and turned touches into steady production. Kelsey Mitchell turned games with shot-making that defied scouting reports. Veterans like Natasha Howard and Odyssey Sims steadied the huddle when games got noisy. Even Sophie Cunningham, expected to be a role player, started swinging possessions with hustle, physicality, and timely buckets. That's not luck. That's a team redefining where its season can go. Which sets up the question nobody wanted to ask out loud. If the Fever can do this without Clark, what happens if the door cracks open for her return? Not a tiny upgrade, a total recalibration of the ceiling. Because when she steps across half court, defenses stop feeling comfortable, and that's the beginning of every snowball run. First, the reason this conversation exists at all. Groin injuries are tricky. They can be stubborn, they can feel fine until a sudden plant, and they rarely respond on an exact schedule. The original announcement said she was done for the regular season, and most people stitched playoffs into that statement. But weeks have passed. Recovery windows for soft tissue can be short or maddeningly long, and the calendar is now in that ambiguous zone where a rehabbing player could legitimately feel close, at least in non-contact or controlled work. That's not a promise of readiness. It's the gray area where medical updates get cautious and rumors get loud. Now the rules, because the rules are the whole ballgame. Once playoff rosters are submitted, they're locked. No hardship additions, no late 7-day deals, no clever free agent band-aids. What's filed is what's live. The nuance lives here. Players already under contract but listed as inactive, injury list, maternity, suspension, can sometimes be activated if a legitimate roster trigger occurs and the league signs off. That's where the speculation starts. It doesn't guarantee anything. It doesn't override health. It doesn't bulldoze roster caps. But it's the language that keeps conversations from getting shut down with a single sentence. If there's a pathway, it runs through that clause. And only that clause. Anything beyond that is noise. There's also the eyebrow-raising detail that Indiana carried 11 into the postseason when 12 is allowed. On paper, that's just a number. In a playoff war, that's a choice. Did they leave space for flexibility? Did they plan for a contingency nobody wanted to say out loud? Here's the fair way to frame it. It could be strategy, it could be cap and medical timing, or it could be coincidence. People close to the league will tell anyone to be careful with conspiracy thinking, but leaving a seat empty when depth wins playoff minutes is unusual enough to keep the conversation alive. If a path exists, that empty chair is either a clue or a red herring. Either way, it fuels the storyline. Of course, there's a gamble here that has nothing to do with paperwork. Drop a star back in after a long layoff, and the room changes. Rhythm gets tested. Conditioning gets exposed in the first 4 trips. Every closeout is a stress test. Re-injury risk never goes to zero. Coaches obsess over continuity for a reason, and yet the other side is simple and brutal. Even a 60% Caitlin Clark changes geometry. Her range pulls a defender 2 steps higher than comfort. That opens slips for Boston. It creates driving windows for Mitchell. It turns weak-side defenders into decision-makers instead of helpers. She doesn't have to touch the ball to tilt actions. That's gravity, and it pays off in silent points. Now layer in the opponent profile. Against a powerhouse like the Aces, the margin is made in spacing, pace, and second-side decision-making. Without Clark, teams pack the paint and dare wings to beat them over the top for 40 minutes. With Clark, that dare becomes a risk. Transition looks arrive half a beat earlier. Cross matches show up in ugly spots. Aces defenders who usually camp in help have to tag higher and rotate farther. That's where a single flare or ghost screen turns into a wide-open 3 or a pocket pass at the nail. She doesn't need to be perfect to bend it. She just needs to be present. Zoom out beyond the white lines and the league lens gets complicated. Everyone recognizes what Clark means for business. Tickets move, ratings spike, neutral fans pick a side. The league wants health prioritized, not shortcuts. But it also wants the best players on its biggest stage. Would leadership rubber stamp a move that checks every box within policy and medicine? Possibly. Would they ice it if risk looked outsized or process looked flimsy? Also possible. That's why this isn't just a team decision. It's a temperature check on what the W values most right now: longevity safeguards or moment making. Reasonable minds can land either way. Let's get specific about what return ready actually means. It's not just pain-free shooting, it's absorbing contact on a switch without guarding the hip. It's sliding 2 times, planting hard on a closeout, and recovering into a rebound battle without that first tightness warning. It's stacking full-speed possessions across practice blocks and waking up the next morning without setbacks. If those boxes are ticked, the basketball argument becomes much easier. If even one of those boxes is shaky, the calculus tilts toward caution, no matter how bright the lights are. There's also chemistry, the invisible piece that makes coaches overthink substitutions. The Fever's current rotation has learned how to win ugly and control tempo. Inserting Clark means reshuffling usage and touch distribution in crunch time. That's not a bad thing, it's just a real thing. The staff would need to decide whether to ramp minutes or surgically deploy her in defined windows. End of quarter offense, after timeout sets, 2-for-1 situations, where the value spikes without demanding 30 straight minutes of high-leverage defense. So, what happens if she actually does return? The first 5 possessions tell the truth. If defenses overreact, Indiana goes to high handoff into slice action for Boston and forces a scramble. If defenses stay home, Clark tests range early to command the second defender. Mitchell becomes the benefactor as a second creator attacking tilted floors. Cunningham turns into a momentum play finisher. Corner threes, runouts, drawn fouls. The Fever's half-court profile gains a release valve, and their transition profile gets juiced by long rebounds off extended contests. Even if the stat line is modest, the ripple effect changes the math. Now the hard realism. This remains a long shot. Playoff rosters don't bend easily. Medical sign-off is conservative by design, especially with a franchise cornerstone. Practice reps at full speed matter and can't be simulated by individual work. The front office has to weigh one historic swing against the next 5 years of contention. That's not a soft choice. It's the job. And if the answer is no, it doesn't dull what this team has already proven. If anything, it reinforces the identity they've built without shortcuts. Bring it all together, and the storyline is clear. The language of the rules leaves a narrow path. The Fever's decisions to date leave room for interpretation. The basketball case is compelling on paper and ruthless in reality, and the stakes for a team, a league, and a star sit at the intersection of health, history, and hype. If the door opens even an inch, a return would be one of the most dramatic finals twists the W has seen. If it stays shut, this run still stands as a franchise turning point and a promise of what's coming next year, when everyone is whole. So here's the question that matters. With a championship within reach and the future on the line, is the boldest move to take the swing or to protect the dynasty window that's just starting to open? Drop thoughts below. And if this breakdown sparked ideas, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more deep dives just like this. Because the next chapter might arrive faster than anyone expects.